Hello, everyone. Before we get started, I'd like to do a quick audio check. If someone can please message me in the Q&A box and let me know if you can hear me. Hello, and welcome to our next webinar, Student Presence in Remote Instruction, of our series, Adapting to COVID-19, Higher Ed in the Transition to Online Learning. We developed this for college and university faculty and staff to learn tips, tricks, and best practices for this accelerated transition to teaching online and working remotely. Thank you for joining us during these trying times. We hope this webinar series is a useful, valuable resource for you. Please connect with us using the hashtags MCCA webinar, COVID-19, and Better Together, and visit our website for updates. In today's session, we will examine how an online learning environment affects the way to which a student feels personally connected with other students and the instructor in a virtual environment in ways instructors can create a personal connection with students. Our presenters are Grace Moser, Anna Blackford, Melissa Whitmer, and Loren Dickens. Grace will be our first presenter, and she is a history professor and veteran online instructor, having taught online since 2014. She recently became certified as a Quality Matters peer reviewer and is involved in the peer review process at SCC. Even though she never took online classes as a college student, Grace really loves the flexibility of online instruction to teach students that may never be able to attend a traditional classroom. She finds online instruction to be exciting and rich, giving students an opportunity to engage with the material is not possible in face-to-face classrooms. As a product of a community college herself, Grace loves to engage with students of all backgrounds and education abilities and views community college as one of the best kept secrets of higher education. Grace, you've got the floor.
Okay, thank you. Hi, everyone. So first of all, you guys are rock stars for making this adjustment to online education. It is not an easy thing, and I really admire what everybody is doing to make themselves a better teacher in the process. The big thing that I wanted to talk about that I feel like is a really successful way to engage students in online courses is to include your personality, to make sure that you are present in the class, that students know who you are, and that you're being seen. So I included this picture of myself just so you can get a taste for what my personality is. Here I am dressed up in a Halloween costume as Babe Lincoln. Remember, I'm a history professor, so that's what I do. And I include this image to my students, and I try to put pictures of me and talk about my own life in the class, because this is the same type of thing that I would be doing in the classroom. And the students online are going to need to get to know me too in order to have that same connection in the class. You don't have to put stupid pictures up there like I do or silly pictures, but just find some way that they can hear or see you. So in the beginning of the semester, what I do is an introduction video. We're already halfway through the semester. So one of the things that I did was I made a video of me talking to my students just about what's going on with coronavirus and making sure that I am here for them and that I'm still available to see and talk. I think having that visual and audio connection to you still makes a big difference. And then I have included little things throughout my course. I don't know how you guys are covering your course, whether you're doing synchronous or asynchronous lecture, but for my online students, I normally don't do a lecture, but this time I did record myself doing asynchronous lectures so that they still can see me and hear me. And then I try to give really good feedback and communicate with them. So I would say that I think the biggest surprise to me is how hard it was to transition my face-to-face classes online. just know that even people who are experienced online instructors, this is difficult. So I'm still learning how to get students to participate when they're used to face-to-face. And I think that students are probably just as freaked out about this online transition as we are, having to adjust to how to do all these things in the class. So one of the things that I'm doing to try to engage my students is I'm using my LMS access reports that I get. So we use Canvas at my campus, and I can see what students are accessing, when they're accessing the information, and what they're completing. And I'm using that to contact students individually to say, hey, I noticed that you weren't watching these videos, or that you're not logging in except once a week. You know, is there something I can do to help you? And I've also offered live chat opportunities because most of my class is asynchronous. So still having the ability to talk to them either by texting or through video conferences, that's what I'm doing. Ultimately, you just got to do your best, you know, and that's basically all I had. I think all the other presenters had some really good information as well, so I will just defer to them.
Thanks so much.
Thanks.
Thanks so much. And now we'll move on to Anna. Anna Blackbird is an assistant professor at Moberly Area Community College. She teaches full-time, doing classroom and clinical instruction in the practical nursing program on the Moberly campus, instructs as an adjunct teaching maternal child nursing in the accelerated ADN program, and also teaches online sections of medical terminology for both dual credit and health sciences students. Anna received her associate degree in nursing from MAC in 1998, a diploma in legal nurse consulting from the College for Professional Studies in 2003, a BSN from the University of Missouri-Sinclair School of Nursing in 2009, and an MSN Ed degree in 2019 from Central Methodist University. Her experience in nursing extends from many years spent in labor, delivery, and postpartum care of mothers and newborns to several years in emergency services and general medical surgical care. Prior to coming to MAC in 2013, Anna spent almost 8 years as the Director of Med-Surg Nursing and Skilled Nursing Coordinator at Samaritan Hospital in Michigan. Anna, it's all yours.
Okay, thank you so much. It's good to be here today. And so while I do teach ground classes, I also have some experiences in doing hybrid education and also online education. And my biggest challenge during this was the rush to recreate an online presence with my ground classes with students who are already used to seeing me face-to-face every day. So like Grace, I mean, they knew me and they knew my personality, and so that did give me a leg up. So what do I typically do when I do my hybrid and online classes, and some tips and tricks that I'm trying to incorporate into what's usually a ground class? I believe a lot in student feedback. I believe that there's no room for improvement when you tell them something at the end. You need to be in constant communication all along. And I adopted this term, glows and grows, from a friend of mine who's a first grade teacher, which I think is a great way of just saying, you know, we're going to get right down and dirty and look at what you do right and what you do wrong. But boy, doesn't glows and grows sound a whole lot better than positive and negative feedback. So what's important to me is to give timely feedback. And I feel like whether that's in your course doing discussion posts, if you're interacting with the students there, or maybe just privately as a comment on their assignments. And we work with Canvas, just like what Grace said that her campus does. And when we have those, we just have the ability to provide that feedback individually on those assignments. And I always encourage the students to be looking at those individually. In the medical terminology class that I teach, we do audio quizzes where they have 5 to 7 words each week, depending on the unit, where the student has to look at the list of words and then they have to speak those words. And I need to give them feedback on pronunciation. And in the first semester I taught that class, I thought, gosh, I hate the fact that I'm copying and pasting what the dictionary says as a pronunciation guide. So I picked up a microphone and I just started saying those words back to them. So if they had a word that they kind of stumbled on or a little bit, I said, this is how we say it. And I give them that opportunity and I say, by gosh, you did a really good job on that last word because that was a really difficult word. So I try to give them those positive and room for improvement feedbacks as we go along with each assignment. But as a class, if I notice that several people are missing the same concept or contacting me about with the same questions or maybe missing the same word, then I do an overall class announcement. Or I say, gee guys, one example in particular was the way that the textbook is set up. It has them all pronouncing the word laryngoscope as laryngoscope, which is actually the British pronunciation of the word. And unless you speak the Queen's English in the United States, it's probably not going to earn you many marks when you go to work. And so I said, if you look it up, and I posted a YouTube link, and I posted those side by side, and I said, this is how they say it in the British English accent, and this is how we say it in America, and it's laryngoscope. And I had so many people reply back that was just so helpful, and so that's something that I try to do. But when you do it as a class, you've got to keep it brief. These guys are not going to want to listen to a 2-hour lecture that's recorded for asynchronous learning because they are limited on time, and especially if they are typically online students, they're going to want that freedom to have that flexibility to do things on their own timeline. That's why they are online students often. But the students that are used to hearing you day in and day out, I've heard back from my normal students today. I had an open Zoom meeting with them over lunch, and we just did a little lunch and learn, and they said, we miss you. We miss hearing your voice. And so maybe those students are going to want those lectures. So make a survey monkey and send it out to your students and say, what would you like? 20-minute lectures or hour-long lectures? What can I do for you? And then another thing to kind of change things up, you could do video feedback as well. And so the example I just gave was one way I did video feedback. I didn't take attendance today. I just did, I just said, hey, I have an open Zoom chat. Come and join me. And I had a little PowerPoint up, and I said, tell me what I'm doing well. Tell me what I need to be doing better to help you. And it was very informal. In fact, at one point, my dog barked, and then everybody went and got their dogs and cats and showed off their dogs and cats. So we digressed a little bit. I kind of felt like a kindergarten teacher, but that was something that, like Grace put out there. It's important to have that connection with them and know that they're human too. And so I found that when you're doing an audio or video feedback, especially if it's a grow, that the benefit of them hearing those vocal inflections is definitely there. For example, I just typed up a quick announcement the other day, and I said, gosh, guys, I just want you to know my expectations are pretty high of you, maybe higher than normal because of this online asynchronous learning format. And I got a private message from a student that said, what do you mean your expectations are higher of us now? Why wouldn't they just do the same as when they're in a classroom? And so when I replied, I chose my words carefully, but I said, because when we're in a classroom, I can look at you and tell whether you're engaged and tell whether you're getting what I'm saying or not. And when you're online, that accountability falls to you. So you're going to have to be able to be disciplined enough to tell me when you're not getting it or when you need some extra help, because I'm not going to be there and be able to assess your engagement. And I feel like if I had done that as an audio comment or video comment to this group of people that knows me, that it probably would have come off as a very positive thing. And instead that connotation was almost negative, because I think we've all heard that adage, if we could convey what we really thought by text message, then would we need emojis? So I think that's a benefit to having that video or audio feedback. As far as discussion posts go, I find it very helpful to have students do video or audio discussions as well, because then I feel like their replies are a little bit more engaging than obligatory for a grade. I also picked up this tip from one of my peers, and he's actually online here, I saw already. Video uses lots of bandwidth, so encourage them, audio may be more favorable, and also consider doing auditory posts, because in that, when you're doing those auditory posts, so there's auditory engagement within a classroom, nobody worries about using the wrong form of the word there. And so sorry to steal that one from you, Rich, but I really did read your email this morning. So I feel like that kind of brings us to meeting our student needs. We all are used to having posted office hours when we're on campus, and that's really nice, but especially with our non-traditional students who are dealing with childcare that has abandoned them in their time of need, or perhaps we have students in nursing that are having to work mandatory overtime at their facilities. So having those posted office hours is nice, but they don't always get your students when you're available. So usually I use email only if the student wants me to contact them via email, or to use as an initial contact to set up an appointment with them. And then I really prefer to use a phone or Zoom if we can't meet face-to-face. And obviously at this time we can't meet face-to-face. So our campus offered us the wonderful opportunity to forward our office phone to our cell phones, which I did take advantage of, because I felt like that was one less number that my students had to worry about trying to locate and find me at. It was in the syllabus, it was printed, it was all they had to do was call it. So I made sure that they knew that. And then we also set up Google Voice a while back, and we can use that for voice or text with our students, so we didn't have to give out our private cell phone numbers. And so I have that available too. They know that that's usually if they need to get a hold of me like right now, then they use that. Otherwise, they just email me if it's not urgent, and we can get together at some other time. I really prefer Zoom if possible, or phone, especially if there's any counseling or coaching to do, because I feel like that those grows are taken with the intention that they are needed in that time. So encouraging communication, I know Grace talked about this too. The students seem stressed. That was the number one theme in my Zoom meeting at lunch today, was students are stressed that they're going to work ahead enough and then not get in their Canvas shells and see that maybe we posted something. And so I just, encourage them to be diligent about checking that, but also to encourage us that, life happens sometimes. We don't always plan for accidents and illnesses and things like that, but I really think that organization is good. I always encourage our students to practice those tips of organization and to work, on task and not procrastinate, but we're all human too. And I just think that when something does happen, sometimes communication doesn't occur with the instructors, and we have to be lenient in those cases. Because if something were to happen to you or one of your children or whatever, would your students be the very first people that you would notify in the event of a crisis? And so I think that we have to consider that some of these guys are 18 and 19 years old, and it's just not their priority to notify one of their teachers that something tragic, or a crisis situation is going on in their lives. I feel like that's on us. I feel like we need to know what grades and assignments are for these students. We need, are they submitting those? Look at your analytics, know what they're doing, reach out to them. We also have retention alerts built in at our facilities, so that somebody is reaching out to them besides us if we're not able to get a hold of them. And I think it's really important in a virtual setting or in an online course. These students that have prepared for that have already prepared with their technology and internet service providers and so forth. But in the cases where we are flipping ground classes into these formats, we have to be understanding and not just assume that people even people in online programs don't always have internet access. You know, the person that is in your online class may only have access to a computer and internet when they come to your computer labs in the evening on your campuses. And if you think that doesn't happen, I'll tell you, I even have a coworker who just told me, she said she was a little bit worried about how this was going to work because she didn't have internet at home. And I said, you just finished your master's online. How on earth did you do that if you don't have internet at home? And she said, I got my master's at McDonald's. And so I think that we have to really consider the fact that some of our students might be in the same boat where they have a laptop or a Chromebook or something like that, and they're getting their degrees sitting at a table at McDonald's. So in conclusion, I just think that a lot of our students are first generation college students, and they're here because this is their way out, and this might be their only opportunity to attend college. I think that they are making great sacrifices to be here, and by being caring and supportive and advocating for those who need our help the most is probably the best way that I know how to show that faculty and student connection.
Great, thank you. Our next presenter is Melissa Whitmer. She's a mathematics instructor at OTC in Springfield, Missouri. She holds a BS in secondary mathematics education from the University of Central Florida and an MS in secondary mathematics education from Missouri State University. She has taught for over 19 years with Springfield Public Schools, Cox College of Nursing, and OTC combined. Melissa is a 2018 recipient of the Governor's Excellent in Education Award. Throughout her career, Melissa has led professional development on best practices using technology and engaging online students. At OTC, she serves as president of Faculty Senate and on various strategic initiative planning committees. Melissa is also serving as chairperson during her third year on the board of directors for MCCA. Yay! Melissa, it's all yours.
Okay, thank you, Kaylin, and I've enjoyed listening to the previous two presenters. They've shared a lot of great information, and I do similar things, so in my part of this, I'm going to try to cover something a little different to give you some ideas about some tools that you can use. So first, I want to talk about a tool that I find very effective for building communication with my students when they are online, and so I use the app and the website called Remind. So Remind setup is simple. You can go to the website remind.com and set up a free account. You can put your name in there, and you can even set up office hours so that students will receive an automatic reply if they're texting you outside of office hours. If you want to use this method to communicate with your students via texting, I suggest downloading the Remind app, and I tell my students to do this as well. If you use the app, it organizes all the messages in an easy-to-see format, and so it's easy to go back and see what the communication was, and as long as you enable the push notifications, then you'll get those responses through the app, and it won't go through your normal texting app. From the account manager screen, you also have the ability to export the record of all of the communication that you had with your participants. When you set up Remind for the first time, you'll have to create your classes, and so you'll just click the link to create a class and type in the class name. So I teach college algebra online, and I have sections that are seated, so I just label them that way so I know which is which. And they automatically generate a code for your class, but you can pick your own code that's easy to remember, like MTH128 web or something like that, so that lets my students kind of know how to join the class. And then there's some important settings when you're setting up Remind that can allow your students to actually see and message each other. And so I have enabled this feature because Sometimes I put my students in groups, and if you put them in the Remind class and you allow them to see and message each other, they can message each other through Remind, and they don't have to share their cell phone numbers with each other. They'll just see each other's names. So when you're ready to add students to Remind, I like to do it directly from the website, and you just click the button to add people, and you can add them in bulk. So you can, one method is you can collect student phone numbers and you manually add them, and once you add the phone numbers into the system, those go away. So you don't have those numbers anymore. Students don't see your phone number, but they can still text you through Remind. You can also add students through Remind with their email addresses if they don't want to get the texting, so they'll get notifications to whatever email they provide. An alternative, if you don't want to manually add students to Remind, is you can provide the information for them to add themselves. So under the Add People, there's a setting or a reference that says to get in-person instructions, and so it looks like this screen here where you can tell people to text a certain code to a certain phone number. And that allows them to manually add themselves, and then you'll get those notifications that those students are now in your Remind. Now, when you compose messages, you have lots of really cool options. So the way that you access these options is look for this little icon that is your New Message button. And then you can select one class, or you can send text to multiple classes if you don't want to duplicate. Type in your message, or if you want to upload a file or a photo, or schedule the announcement to go out later, or text a link, you can do lots of different things through the texting. So one way that I get around the message limit for texting is I attach a photo or screenshot of my announcement, or sometimes I just upload, like I save my announcement as a file and I upload the PDF file. So you can attach photos or screenshots. You can attach documents. You have upload a file. So this works great for my lengthy announcements. This way my students can see it through text. So this is a screenshot just showing what the text looks like for the user when they get that notification that you've sent an announcement. So they can click, like this announcement actually contains a sign-up link for tutoring, and it also has the PDF file that they can view. I love the feature of scheduling my announcements. I use this frequently because now I'm meeting online with my seated students, and I meet with them every day during normal class time. And so I don't want to always text that reminder manually, so sometimes I'll set it up to like every day during the week at that same time send this text message. And what I do is I text to the students my Zoom link. And so they can join right from their phone, or it just gives them that reminder right there that they're going to meet me for class. Remind is a great tool to communicate with students who are kind of showing some red flags. So if they are missing some assignments or they're not checking in, I send them the email, but I also send a Remind text. And I have found that students will generally reply to the Remind text. They just feel more comfortable with texting and telling me their situation compared to communicating through email. So this is just an example of a communication that I send out when a student missed an assignment, and so I try to word it very positively, and I offer assistance, and I ask if everything is okay. So it opens up that door for students who, you know, or maybe have some extenuating circumstances, and they'll communicate that to me. So at the end of this presentation, we're going to have the opportunity for the audience to ask questions. So I'll go ahead and advance and wait for that time for all the presenters to finish. So another thing that we've heard a lot about nationwide right now is Zoom. If you have Canvas or a different learning management system, you probably already have some kind of built-in conferencing tool. I know Canvas has a conferencing tool. But I've always used Zoom for its features that just seem to work so well with being able to connect with students quickly and easily. So to use Zoom for the very first time, go to zoom.us, or your college might have pro accounts already for you. So that's been kind of one of the changes, is they've been allowing educators to have the access to the pro account, which gives you unlimited time for your meetings. So with Zoom, I am right now with my seated classes, we are meeting on Zoom every day during our scheduled time. And so this allows me to see face-to-face that interaction. I teach, and what I do is I share my screen, and I use I have a tablet, like a Wacom bamboo tablet that I can write on, and I use the program OneNote. And OneNote lets me write and show maybe some math problems. I'm a math teacher, so I'll go through examples. And that was my very first challenge when I found out that we were moving online for the rest of the semester. My online classes, I had no worries about them. They were used to learning with my videos, but I didn't feel that my seated students would be ready and prepared to really go into my videos on time and watch and take notes. So I decided to try this out. And I'm not requiring attendance with my seated students, but I'm encouraging it. I tell them that I am still required to take attendance, and so they can attend my virtual sessions, or they can get attendance through submitting assignments. I'm having nearly 100% attendance so far this week in my classes. I'm getting really positive feedback from the students that they really do enjoy the face-to-face interaction and the ability to ask questions. So I'm just going to go through a couple other features that I use. And again, I use this in combination with Remind. I text out about 10 minutes before we meet, and I say, hey, we're meeting at 1 o'clock. Here's the link, and this is what I'm lecturing on, and it seems to work really well. Now, I've also used Zoom for virtual office hours. So some instructors are doing this from home now, and what's kind of cool is you can set up a doorbell chime. So when you go to your personal settings for Zoom, you can put a doorbell chime so that if you want to walk away from your device, definitely make sure that you turn your video and your sound off, but you can have that doorbell chime to alert you that you got a student there. Now, I personally am not doing virtual office hours now because of my own children at home, and I'm working with them while I'm not teaching. So I've just told my students that if they need help, I'll do a private Zoom with them, and we'll just schedule that. And this is something, we're supposed to be talking about how do we get students engaged online, and I actually share my Zoom link with my students and let them get together to study. So for my college algebra classes, I created the discussion forum on Canvas, and this right here is the screenshot showing the instructions. And I provide my personal Zoom link, and I actually give them the opportunity to meet 4 points. And so I've got another screenshot over on the left that shows some of my college algebra students that are meeting for their own study session, and they're sharing my notes. So they're talking about the college algebra lesson. So that's just something else that you can try. It's all completely student-led. They get in that discussion forum and they establish a date and a time to meet. And generally after that first meeting, they get some study buddies that they meet with the entire semester, and they never meet in person. A new thing that I'm going to try with my synchronous lessons is I'm going to do Zoom breakout rooms. And so this is a feature that you have to make sure that you have enabled it. Only the presenter will see it. And it allows you to go ahead and parse out the students that are attending into little individual Zooms. And so it can automatically divide them into how many groups or how many in each group that you want. And so I'm going to use this as a way to kind of get students to work together on a math problem and then come back and share with the rest of the class. Some tips when you're using Zoom. If you're lecturing, tell the students to use the chat feature to type in questions, or there's a raise hand feature. So I monitor the participants, and if I see that little raise hand icon, and I can say, oh, Heather has a question. What's your question? And then it's just like in class. She can ask the question, and I can respond. Also, if you tell students, like, you definitely want to put all students on mute from the very beginning because it decreases audio feedback. And then tell them if they want to ask a question, they can hold down the space bar on their keyboard, and that's going to unmute them, or they can physically go to the microphone and unmute themselves. And that's all I had, so I'm going to turn this back over to Kaylin to finish with the last presenter, and then we'll do questions at the end. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And our last presenter is Loren Dickens. She is an assistant professor of economics and associate dean of workforce and industry programs at St. Charles Community College. She holds a MA in economics from the University of Missouri, St. Louis. Before moving to administration, her teaching experience over the last 14 years includes both secondary and post-secondary education with positions at St. Louis University High School, University of Missouri St. Louis, the Center for Entrepreneurship and Economic Education, and St. Charles Community College. Throughout her career, Loren has instructed and developed a variety of classes in the online environment. As an administrator in CTE and workforce programs, she has had the opportunity to mentor both new faculty and industry professionals acclimating to positions in higher education. Loren, you have the virtual floor.
Hi, everybody. I am going to echo a lot of what the other three presenters said this afternoon, but also really come at this from two different perspectives. One, from my perspective as an administrator in helping students navigate confusing classes and helping faculty navigate some issues with students, but also from my own perspective in communicating with my own students in the classes that I teach. So this meme, I think, kind of sarcastically summarizes how many of us have felt. If you're familiar with this scene from Friends, this is more than a pivot. It really is a pretty significant change for most of us. And I would say that the big thing, echoing the other three presenters, is communication. You need communication, good communication to support success, and that's true of our traditional students, but it really does need to be kind of ramped up in the online environment. How do you get students to read it? We've heard some really great suggestions, from Remind to emails, all different kinds of things. The one real practical thing that I would suggest is remind your students that they have notification settings in their learning management system. Chances are good, if they have been at your institution for a few semesters, they set those notifications up a long time ago. And their cell phone number may have changed, their primary email address, in case they have notifications sent to a personal email address, may be different now. So reminding them to go back in and check those notification settings and adjust them so that they are getting notified when you post an announcement or send a message to them is huge. That can really be a good way for you to meet them where they are, but your LMS is gonna send those messages right to them. Be consistent when organizing your communication. This was a common thing that I would have with students, is they would come to me frustrated because a specific faculty member wasn't sharing information. And what had happened most of the time was that faculty had been communicating with students, but they weren't communicating in consistent places. So if you're going to use course announcements to communicate, use course announcements. If it's going to be their institutional email address, then stick with that. If it's going to be your messaging system through your LMS, go with that. If it's Remind, just make sure that your students know where to look for communication from you. And the next thing, what are your expectations and are they realistic? and not just of your students, but also of yourself. So making sure that you're telling your students when it's appropriate for them to expect a response from you, and what kind of things you'll respond to via email. I joke with my students a lot that when I teach seated students that if I get to a place where I've explained the same thing and I can't think of another way to say it, I'll just say the same thing, only louder. And I think that sometimes we get to that point with email that we have typed an explanation, or we have said the same thing, or we feel that we've said the same thing to the student and they're still not getting it. Before you get to that point of frustration, take a step back and request a phone call or a chat or a Zoom meeting or something like that. That communication in text and emails, as some of the other presenters have said, it's tricky. It's tricky to understand tone, and I think that when we get to a point where, as instructors, we sense that we're getting frustrated with the student or a situation, or the student might be getting frustrated, email is not the place to continue that dialogue. So make sure that you open up opportunities to be reached over the phone, via Zoom, however is convenient and preferred for you. And then be authentic. Be you. Your students are used to you. We're midway through a semester, past midway now, and they know your personality. So don't be afraid to let that show in your classes. The tip that I have that I found to be really helpful for me as an instructor is weekly check-in messages. I do this in my class weekly only because that's how the class is structured. It's easy for me to do it that way. This could be done by unit, it could be bi-weekly, but the way that I do these is I send students messages based on their performance that week and how it compares to their overall performance in the course. So the weekly check-ins fall under three categories. I'm going to celebrate success and ask the student that did well, that knocked it out of the park, what a tip is for a peer that's struggling with the topic. Did they find a resource online that helped them and explained something differently than I was able to, and that made the concept click? If so, what was it? If they have a memory trick for something, then ask them to share that, because it really can help the other students in the class. Just a what's up, acknowledging that the student's performance on a test, a quiz, an assignment, something differed from the norm. A lot of times as instructors, we will chalk it up to somebody having an off week or being too busy to study or something like that. But why were they too busy? What made them off that week? It's almost always external factors. And those external factors really are supporting students through those things and helping connect them with resources when they need them really is our tool for retention. So identifying that is huge, because most of the time it is something that's exogenous to the class and the student might need support. And the third one is concerned. And I never, ever make any kind of suggestion that via email that a student should consider dropping a class or anything like that. If I have a concern, I will send them an email about getting back on track. And as you create the messages, and here's the real core tip that I've used for the past few years, as I create these messages, I catalog them and save them by week, topic, unit, and I save them in a document. So I have a document for Principles of Microeconomics, week 8, and it connects back to maps back to the objectives that we covered that week, and will then allow me over the next semester to pull that same document and I don't have to reinvent the wheel. I've already created a weekly check-in for the students that are doing great. I've created one for the students that I might be concerned about. I've created one for the students that I'm really concerned about. And in each one, I end it with some kind of an action step. I apologize for that. That's my 6-year-old in the background. And then why? Saving time on communication, shifting focus to the student that's struggling, and maintaining a connection with our students. And that is, I think, all that I have. And I believe we're ready for questions. And again, I apologize for the antics in the background.
Hey, it happens to the best of us. Mine are outside beating something with a stick, and I can hear it very loudly. I hope no one else can. So yes, it is time. Thank you to all the presenters. We will move on to our questions. So if anyone has any questions, please type them into the Q&A box. And our first question is, sorry, I have to scroll down to it. How can I help some of my students feel more confident about themselves and strengthen their interpersonal skills while online?
Hi, this is Melissa. I can, I guess, respond to that question and let anybody else add to it. A lot of students, when they're first online, they feel really isolated and unsure of how can they tackle this. And so I think the strategy that these other presenters have shared, where you celebrate those successes early on and regularly to build up their self-esteem and to let them know, hey, you're doing things right, keep it up, I'm always going to be here. And then on the other side of that, contacting them very early if they are getting behind and they're missing something so that they can correct that.
Is there another presenter that would like to touch on that? If not, we will go on to the next question. Is Remind free, and the OneNote and the Google Voice that Melissa mentioned, are all of those free?
So Remind is free, and I've been able to use it every semester with all of my classes and never have had any issues. So that's something that I would definitely recommend using. I don't use Google Voice, but I know that that is also another free service. I just use Remind to text my students and to do that two-way communication because they don't see my phone number when they use that. OneNote is an Office product, so my institution does provide the Microsoft Office package for faculty and for students. So you might want to check into that and see if that's available. There's other programs, though, too, that you can use to write on, like if you have an iPad, when you're using Zoom or something like that, you can share your iPad and use that device to write.
This is Anna. I'm the one that uses Google Voice, and we just found that as a nice alternative for, like, when we take students to clinicals if they need to get a hold of us and we're not at a computer, because we found that the Canvas Teacher app doesn't push notifications very well in real time, or especially lately we're having great deal of lag, even getting those messages to push to our emails so that we get notified that way. So we implemented Google Voice. And one nice feature of that is just like the Remind or things that my kids used when they were in high school, communicate with events and so forth, that there's a way to track that, so that if there's ever any question about like what kind of communication that you and a student were having, it's easily discoverable, and you have a transcript available.
Great, thank you. And our next question is, how does Remind compare to Canvas push notifications?
So Remind is used for texting. So that's going to be a bit different. because of the platform that you're using to share those messages. It's very easy. I find Remind easier to communicate back and forth with my students than through using Canvas. For instance, if a student has a question about a math problem that they're solving on my math lab, they can easily take a screenshot and they can text it to me through Remind, and I can text back. So it's a very quick way to communicate without sharing your phone numbers, which I love. But I also back up my communications with students through email, but instead of using like the OTC email, I do use Canvas notifications. So anytime I send an announcement, they're getting it both ways through Canvas and through the texting.
And while we have you, Melissa, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say that this is just the difference between the push notification and Remind. I think the big thing is that with the push notifications through Canvas, that's simply an alert to the students to go back and check Canvas, whereas Remind and other tools like that, you interact within the app.
And our next question is for Melissa. Can you elaborate on the Zoom study sessions for students? Is there a way to record them, or do you always join in them?
Okay, so that's a great question. So under your Zoom settings, you can select a setting that allows people to join before the host. So that's important because that way you don't have to join their sessions. They can join and have their own meeting. The second setting that you want to enable is to automatically record meetings in the cloud. So this is really helpful if you have maybe you've scheduled your own Zoom meeting and students are joining it before you because you've enabled them to be able to get in before you have joined. But if there's any type of, bad things going on, this is not necessarily for college, but I know high school is experiencing this. You have a recording of what went on before you joined the session. And the recordings allow me to go back and see my students who met as a team. I can watch their meeting later.
Great. And yes, this event is being recorded, and we will be emailing it out to all the attendees. So you can simply download the presentation, and then you can definitely share it with faculty on your campus. We also had a comment that they like the tip about consistency in communicating. And I'm not seeing any other questions pop up, but if we see any in my closing, we will jump to that. I want to thank everyone again for attending and joining us today, especially the presenters. They are valuable to us, and they jumped in on this opportunity pretty last minute to share their expertise and work quickly to get this information to you during this week. We will be sending a recording of today's webinar, as I said, to everyone that registered via email. There'll also be a session survey link in this email, so if you could please take that, that helps us develop our programming. You can learn more about our webinar series on our website, mccatoday.org, and click on the coronavirus banner at the top of the page. Feel free to share this webinar series with other people. They are absolutely complimentary to all. And we are developing these in real time, so there might be some changes to some of the webinars. So please check in often. But we, of course, will send you notifications as well. Our next session, Tips and Tricks Working from Home, is tomorrow, April 1st at 11:15, and that's no April Fool's joke. You can connect with us. Please connect with us if there's any other way we can serve you during this time. We have also created an online forum you can access through your member portal. You can share and gain useful resources during this time. Again, you can share today's experience on social using hashtags MCCA webinar, Better Together, and COVID-19. It looks like we do have another quick question. Is there a way to easily publish Zoom recordings or provide links for students?
I can answer that, perhaps. This is Anna. I've been teaching virtually in an accelerated ADN program, and so we actually do meet live every day from 10 to 12. and I do record those Zoom lectures. We do take attendance in this virtual synchronous learning environment, but there are sometimes cases where connection is interrupted, or if they are absent for some reason, they do have access, or if they just want to go back and re-listen to the lecture. And so when you host a Zoom meeting, they actually will send you an email as soon as that uploading and buffering and everything else has taken effect. I guess that scrubbing process. It was quite slow a couple of weeks ago, where it was taking like 24 hours before I was getting notification to upload any type of lecture. But now it's happening, really within just about 30 minutes. And so you'll get an email, or you can just go out to your Zoom. I always record to the cloud. So if you have a professional Zoom account, you want to make sure that you record to the cloud and not record to your computer. Once you have it recorded in the cloud, you just go to those cloud recordings and you share your link. Now, we use Canvas as an LMS, and I created a page, and I put that page in the module. And every day that I post that link, I just go in there and I just add to the page. So the page is titled Previous Zoom Recordings, and I just date it and post the link, and all they have to do is just click on that link, and it'll pop them out right into that Zoom recording. So I hope that's helpful. We find it very efficient, and that's on them to go see where it is, rather than me just posting announcements. I feel like, just like in nursing, which is my area of expertise, you get alarm fatigue when you hear the same bells and whistles again and again and again. And if we post announcements or oversend emails, they're going to get where they're not even checking them. So if they know that this is where that always is, and I'm going to go look for it there, then it does put the accountability back on them too.
Thanks so much. And again, we want to thank everyone for attending. We want to thank our presenters so much for doing this so last minute. The event is being recorded. We will share it with you via email. Please take that survey, and I hope everyone will be joining us tomorrow at 11:15 for tips and tricks working from home. I know I will be taking diligent notes. Thanks, everyone, again, and have a great day.
Thank you.
Everyone will be joining us tomorrow at 11:15 for tips and tricks.